This video is brought to you by Glasses USA. More about them in a bit, but if you want glasses at up to 70% off retail, follow the Glasses USA link in the description. You'll love it, or they'll give you your money back. And let's get into it. Mohandas Gandhi started out as a scared, painfully shy young man, yet he was transformed by injustice to step beyond his insecurities to become the 20th century's most influential champion of social justice and the standard-bearer for non-violent resistance. His example of humility, courage, and quiet dignity has inspired millions and been the catalyst for the change to a better world. In this week's Biographics, we discover the inspirational story of the great soul, Mahatma Gandhi. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was born on October 2, 1869, in the coastal Indian town of Porbandar. He was the youngest of 6 children, which included 2 half-sisters from his father's previous marriage. Mohandas's father, Karamchand, was the Diwan, or political leader, of Porbandar. His mother, Putlibai, was deeply religious, impressing strong Hindu beliefs on her children. Karamchand provided well for his family, who lived in a 3-story house and had servants. Mohandas was known by all as Mohan. He was especially devoted to his mother, who he considered to be a saint. Her piety made a deep impression upon him. When the boy was 5, his father was appointed the chief minister of the smaller inland city of Rajkot. After 2 years, the family joined him there. Mohan was a painfully shy child who kept to himself at school. When his lessons were done, he would run home in order to avoid having to talk to any of his peers. He was also a fearful child who was terrified of many things, but especially the dark. He found his only solace in books, which were something of a constant companion. When he was just 7 years of age, as was the Hindu custom, Mohan became engaged to Kasturba Makhanji Kapadia, who was a few months older than him. The arranged marriage was completed when Mohan turned 13. The planning for the lavish wedding ceremony and adjustment to married life meant that he had to take a year off from his schooling. He was an average student at best, though he tried hard to please his teachers. He had no interest in sports, games, or social activities with any of his peers. He did, however, make one friend around this time. He was a Muslim boy by the name of Sheikh Mehtab. Sheikh was older and more street-smart than Mohan. He was also physically larger and stronger than him. He chided Mohan about his frail condition and told him that if he ate meat, he would get much bigger and stronger. Now, this was strictly against the Hindu beliefs, but Mohan met his friend in secret one day, and he had his first taste of meat. Even though it caused him to vomit, he continued to eat it for the next year without letting anyone else know. During that period, Sheikh took him to a brothel, an experience which was an embarrassing disaster for the impressionable team. Realizing that Sheikh was a bit of a bad influence, he cut off association with him and returned to a strict vegetarian diet. Mohan's father, Karamchand, died when the boy was 16 years old. The grief was compounded when Mohan and Kasturba's first child died at less than a week old. The couple would go on to have 4 more children, with the first being born in 1888. Mohan completed college at the age of 18 and enrolled in Samaldas College. However, he disliked the lecture style of teaching and dropped out after only a few months. He had set his sights on becoming a lawyer and eventually becoming a Diwan like his father. A family friend suggested that he should go to England to study, where it was easier to pass the bar. It was agreed that this would be the best course for Mohan. The shy Hindu boy was now headed for the bright lights of London. On August 10, 1888, Mohan left his family, including his wife and his 1-month-old son, Harilal, and he headed for Bombay, where he boarded a ship that was bound for London. Before leaving, though, he was summoned by the leader of his caste, who warned him that if he went to England, he would be tempted to break the rules of Hinduism. He was told to either abandon his plans or be excommunicated from the caste. Gandhi accepted this consequence, and he continued upon his way. Fitting into Western culture, though, it was a shock to the 18-year-old. Everything, it was so different to what he had known back in India. Still, he did his best to fit in, buying a fine suit complete with leather gloves, top hat, and silver-tipped cane. He also paid for lessons in elocution, manners, and dance. His biggest challenge was with regard to his diet. He had vowed to his mother that he was not going to eat meat, but he was finding it very difficult to find restaurants that catered to vegetarians. His chronic shyness prevented him from requesting alternatives to what was on offer. Finally, though, he found a vegetarian restaurant along with a whole community of vegetarians. And it was at this point that he joined the London Vegetarian Society. Despite his difficulties with fitting into London life, Gandhi did well academically. He passed his law exams in June of 1891. His friends at the Vegetarian Society, they held a celebratory evening in his honor. When it came time to give a speech, however, Mohan was so nervous that he simply rose and only said, "Thank you." On his return to India, Mohan was met at Bombay harbour by his older brother, who bore some terrible news. His mother, Putlibai, had died in his absence. Mohan's grief was compounded with the consequences of his overseas foray. He was now disfellowshipped from his caste. In order to please his family members, he agreed to bathe in a sacred river in order to wash away the sins of England. This precipitated his re-entry into the caste. Gandhi looked for work as a lawyer in Bombay. However, his chronic shyness was still preventing him from making any advancement. He recalled how he felt presenting his first case before the court, saying, "My head was reeling and it felt as if the whole court was doing likewise." He retreated to the less imposing town of Rajkot and established a small law office there. Shortly thereafter, he received an offer from a merchant who had been a friend of his father. This man was now based in South Africa, and he needed a lawyer to help with a court case. The year-long job was offered to Gandhi, and he accepted it despite recently becoming a father again. He kept his wife and 2 young sons under the care of his brother, and he headed off for Durban, South Africa in April of 1893. After settling into his new surroundings, Gandhi took the train to Pretoria, where the court case was to be tried. He purchased a first-class ticket. However, on one of the stops, a European man boarded the car that he was in. The man resented seeing an Indian in first class and left to find the train conductor. The 2 men returned, and Gandhi was ordered to go down to the third-class section. Gandhi showed them his first-class ticket and refused to move. After that, train security was called, and Gandhi was kicked off the train. He had to go the rest of the way in a horse-drawn carriage. However, the white passengers of their carriage, they refused to let an Indian sit inside with them, and he was made to sit on the outside footboard. He later recalled, "The insult was more than I could bear." This was the watershed experience of Mohandas Gandhi's life. As if by miracle, he shook off his timid nature and stepped forward as a leader of the oppressed. When he arrived in Pretoria, he called a meeting of the Indian community and gave the first speech of his life, calling for the Indians to stand up for their rights. Once his work on the court case was complete, Gandhi decided to stay and continue to fight for Indian rights. In 1894, he established the Natal Indian Congress to give Indians a political voice. He established himself as a leader in the local community, giving free legal advice and offering support. In 1896, after 3 years in South Africa, Gandhi returned to India to collect his family. He returned with his wife and 2 sons, who were now aged 9 and 5, along with a nephew. Gandhi demanded that his family dress as Europeans and eat with knives and forks, as was the way with Indians in South Africa. This caused tension within his family. Still, 2 more sons were added to the family in the coming years. When the Boer War broke out in 1899, Gandhi felt that if the Indians supported the government, they would be rewarded with better treatment. He organized an Indian ambulance corps, who were a valuable asset to the army. But the loyalty, it went unrewarded, with the harsh treatment continuing. During this time, Gandhi developed the life philosophy, which was to guide him for the remainder of his days. He called it Satyagraha, which means devotion to the truth. The 3 core tenets of the belief were non-cooperation, non-violence, and non-possession. In 1906, the South African province of Transvaal enacted a law that required all Indians to register and be given identity cards. The police were allowed to stop and demand their registration at any time. No other group had this requirement. Gandhi advocated the use of Satyagraha to counter the law. He told people not to register. As a result, he and many others were thrown in jail, but Gandhi taught that righteous imprisonment was an honorable thing. The concept of Satyagraha took hold, and Gandhi established a number of Satyagraha settlements. The people in these settlements, they practiced non-possession, living a simple and austere life. Gandhi also organized a large coal miner strike. The men practiced non-cooperation by refusing to work and non-violence by refusing to react when they were attacked by authorities. In July of 1914, the South African government passed the Indian Relief Act, which went some way to righting the wrongs that had been heaped upon the Indian community. The 20 years of struggle that Gandhi had put into the cause were largely responsible for these changes. And after this, he was ready to return to India, bringing his philosophy with him. And you know what else he brought back to India with him? His famous glasses. Yes, I absolutely just did that. Welcome to an unexpected ad read brought to you by Glasses USA. And you can bet that Gandhi wished they existed back when he wore glasses because they're just excellent. These ones, they're called Elliot, and I've also got two others that you see me wearing from time to time. There's one, this. There's also a bigger pair, which I don't have on my little table here, but you can also get them in a whole bunch of other styles. They've got a huge range. Some 4,000 options are available. And hey, they've also got designer sunglasses. You saw me wearing these at the beginning of the video. Now, this isn't actually on the talking points, but I believe what is perhaps the biggest testament to Glasses USA is that this is my second pair of sunglasses from them. A few months ago, I lost a pair while I was on holiday, and by lost, I mean I literally flushed them down the toilet by accident. I really couldn't be making this stuff up. And I had such a good experience with Glasses USA that I just went on the internet and bought the same identical pair. They already had my prescription. I just plugged it in and I bought a new pair that's exactly the same. I think that really says a lot about how great it is. You can also try them on online with a virtual mirror, and the best thing of all, it's super affordable. Glasses USA, they cut out the middleman, giving you prescription glasses at up to 70% off retail, and frames and lenses, they start at just $30. Plus, super high quality lenses, they're every good as bit as my old glasses that I had ages ago. They were overpriced and just not as good. And if you're not happy, you can just send them back. There's a 100% money back guarantee. You can check out glassesusa.com in the link below and get a special deal on your first pair. And let's get back to Gandhi and his non-Glasses USA specs. Gandhi was surprised to receive a hero's welcome back to India. His efforts on behalf of South African Indians had been well reported over the years. An Indian poet referred to him as Mahatma, meaning great soul, and the name took hold as a sign of respect. The shy young man who had left in 1893 returned in 1915 as a leader, and he was a leader with a mission. And that, of course, was Indian self-rule. Gandhi also challenged his own people to look at the unfair treatment within their own culture. He challenged the caste system and especially the terrible treatment of the lowest class, known as the untouchables. He established a Satyagraha settlement in which the people spun yarn and farmed fruit trees. Gandhi accepted untouchables into this community and taught the local peasants proper hygiene and encouraged factory workers to wage peaceful strikes against their unfair working conditions. Despite his belief in non-violence, Gandhi did support the British war effort during World War I. At the war's end, the government passed an act making it illegal for any group to organize in opposition to the government. Gandhi called for a mass strike to protest the law, and for one day, the whole of India came to a standstill. It was clear evidence of the power that Gandhi was able to wield. Yet when reports filtered in that some Indians had resorted to violence on the day of peaceful protest, he was bitterly disappointed. He knew at that point that his people as a whole were not ready for Satyagraha. Now, the British were concerned that there would be further outbreaks of violence, and so a law was passed banning any gatherings of Indians in the city of Amritsar, one of the places where violence had occurred. The following day was the beginning of the religious new year, and about 10,000 people gathered in the town square. They had not yet heard the news of the ban. As they were peacefully listening to a speech, 90 soldiers and 2 armored cars turned up. They blocked off the only exit and proceeded to fire their weapons into the unarmed crowd of men, women, and children. 379 people were killed that day, with more than 1,000 being wounded. In 1920, Gandhi became the leader of the Indian National Congress, advocating his non-violent resistance and instituting strikes and boycotts to bring pressure on the system. Gandhi told the people to boycott British cloth and spin their own. He vowed to spend time spinning every day and took to wearing clothing made of hand-spun cloth. He made the spinning wheel a national symbol of Indian independence. Gandhi travelled throughout the massive countryside, going mostly on foot. He lived with the downtrodden in their makeshift dwellings and listened to their problems. To them, he was a saintly figure, and they referred to him as Bapu, meaning father. In March 1922, Gandhi was arrested for sedition. The trial gave him a platform to expound upon the unfair treatment of Indians and his refusal to cooperate with unjust laws. Pleading guilty, he was sentenced to 6 years imprisonment. Gandhi, though, he was not deterred, using his time of confinement to read and study. After 2 years, he was released. His focus was now on creating harmony between Hindus and Muslims. For centuries, the two groups had been at loggerheads with one another, with violent clashes often breaking out. Gandhi saw that independence would be impossible without unity, and he was determined to bring these two groups together. Gandhi undertook a hunger fast as a tool to bring the Hindus and the Muslims together. For 3 weeks, he only drank water. As their bapu grew weaker by the day, the Hindus and Muslims finally agreed to put aside their differences in order to stop his suffering. On March 12, 1930, Gandhi began a month-long trek from his ashram in Ahmedabad to the sea. Hundreds and then thousands of followers of all religions and castes joined him along the way. News of the march filled papers around the world. The British had long imposed a law making it illegal for anyone to make salt from seawater in India. As a result, they were able to make huge profits from their salt tax. 24 days after setting out on his march to the sea, Gandhi arrived at Dandi on the Gulf coast of Cambay. The following morning, Gandhi walked out into the seawater to bathe. On his return, he picked up a handful of salt in defiance of the Salt Act. This act was a signal for his countrymen, and up and down India's coastline, thousands of others began collecting seawater in order to make and sell salt. Many were arrested, including Gandhi, who was thrown in prison for a second time. Yet the British could not silence Mahatma. Officials now realized that this man held a powerful sway over the masses. He simply could not be ignored any longer. Furthermore, the British government, both in India and at home, were being pressured by other governments to release Gandhi from jail. Finally, the British Viceroy in India, Lord Irwin, met with Gandhi. After lengthy discussion, they came to a truce. Gandhi would call off the demonstrations, the prisoners would all be released, and Indians would be allowed to make their own salt. In 1931, Gandhi travelled to London to represent the Indian National Congress at an international roundtable conference. He called for Indian independence from Britain.
It is complete independence that we want.
Rather than mix with the other delegates in their five-star hotels, Gandhi stayed with an old friend and spent his days walking around the slums dressed in his traditional homespun khadi and his sandals. He was, by now, the famous international figure, and newsreels of his visit were shown in movie theatres all around the world. Shortly after returning to India, Gandhi was again arrested for inciting civil disobedience. While he was in prison, the British government passed a law that discriminated against the untouchables in court proceedings. Gandhi was infuriated and announced that he would not eat until this law was revoked. Fearing that his death would create a martyrdom that would doom them in the eyes of the world, the authorities caved in and the law was rescinded. When Britain declared war on Germany in 1939, Gandhi told the authorities that Indians would only join the war effort if they were promised their independence. 3 years later, he started a Quit India movement. As always, he planned for the campaign to be non-violent, but things soon got out of hand and riots broke out across the country. The authorities blamed Gandhi, and once more, he was thrown in jail. His beloved wife, Kasturba, was also imprisoned at this time. Indeed, she soon became ill, dying in custody on February 22nd, 1944. Following his wife's death, Gandhi grew weak with malaria. The authorities agreed to release him in May of 1944, and he went to Bombay to recover and recuperate. The end of World War II saw Great Britain on its knees. Though victorious, it had spent exorbitant amounts in the war effort and now no longer had the resources to maintain its rule within India. With little choice in the matter, Britain offered India its independence. It was the grand victory that Gandhi had been fighting for the past 30 years. Even though the nation was now free to rule itself, India was still plagued with deep division between Hindus and Muslims. The only solution seemed to be to divide the country up into Hindu India and Muslim Pakistan. This was a move that was greatly displeasing to Gandhi, who longed for unity between these two groups. In the weeks following the creation of Pakistan, there were violent clashes between Muslims and Hindus up and down the country. Massacres occurred throughout 1947, with both sides being equally responsible for the bloodshed. Hundreds of thousands of people died, and there were riots in most of the major cities. On January 13th, 1948, the 78-year-old Gandhi began a fast in order to get the madness to stop. He was so despondent that he refused to even drink water. Despite the physical pain that he was in, he still led a prayer meeting from his bed. His words were broadcast around the entire country. 5 days into his fast, Muslim and Hindu leaders agreed to a peace accord. However, Gandhi was still very concerned about the direction the fledgling nation was taking. The new Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, was constantly at odds with his deputy, Vallabhbhai Patel, and Gandhi counselled both men to make peace. On January 30th, 1948, he was in a meeting with Patel. Just after 5 p.m., he came out into the garden of Birla House in Delhi to offer prayers. Weakened from his recent fast, he leaned on two of his followers for support as he walked. A crowd of some 500 people were waiting to greet him. As he made his way to the platform, a Hindu extremist, angered at Gandhi's leniency towards the Muslims, stepped forward. He bowed before the Mahatma and then pulled out a pistol and fired 3 shots in succession at point-blank range. Within half an hour, the last breath of life had seeped out of his body and the great soul was no more. When he heard the news of Mahatma's death, the Prime Minister stated, "The light has gone out of our lives, and there is darkness everywhere." Mohandas Gandhi was a light not just to the people of India, but those of the entire world. His funeral procession through the streets of Delhi was attended by more than 2 million people. And years after his death, countless other millions, including a young Baptist minister from Georgia named Martin Luther King, would find inspiration in his words and in his legacy. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, do give us a like below and don't forget to subscribe. Also, check out Glasses USA. It's just a great deal. You'll find a link in the description below. And as always, thank you for watching.